You did it this morning. You looked at that bowl of oatmeal sitting on your counter, the same bowl you have been eating for years, and you felt like you were making the responsible choice. You added the blueberries on top, the way the article said to. You skipped the sugar. You told yourself, this is what eating healthy looks like. And then, somewhere around 10:15, the bottom fell out. The energy disappeared. The fog rolled in. Your hands wanted something sweet, and your brain could barely finish a sentence. And you sat there thinking, I did everything right. Why does my body keep doing this? I am going to count down 5 breakfast strategies that metabolic researchers identify as the most powerful for blood sugar stability. And number 1 is the combination that changes everything, because it is the only approach that works on all the mechanisms at once. We are going from 5 down to 1, and by the time we reach the bottom of that list, you will understand not just what to eat, but why everything you have tried before fell short. Stay all the way to the end. Number 1 is the one that makes the real difference, and I promise it will surprise you. Let me describe something to you, and I want you to tell me honestly whether this sounds like your mornings. You wake up. You are not particularly hungry, but you know you should eat something. You make what feels like a reasonable breakfast, oatmeal, or whole grain toast, or maybe a bowl of the cereal that has the word healthy printed across the box in large green letters. You pour a glass of orange juice because it feels like the natural thing to do in the morning. You sit down, you eat. You feel okay for a while, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And then it happens, not all at once, but gradually, like a light dimming, the sharpness fades out of your thinking. Your eyes feel heavier than they should for 10 o'clock in the morning. A quiet irritability creeps in, not at anything in particular, just a general low-level friction with the world, and the hunger returns. Not gentle, distant hunger, urgent hunger, the kind that insists, the kind that pulls you toward the kitchen, the kind that makes you reach for a biscuit or a second cup of coffee with a little sugar just to get back to functional. You have felt this so many times that you have started to believe it is just how your body works. You have assumed it is age. You have assumed it is just the way mornings go now. You have tried eating less, eating more carefully, switching cereals, switching breads, and the crash keeps coming back like clockwork. Here is what I need you to hear, and I mean this without any qualification at all. You are not imagining this. It is not age. It is not a character flaw or a weakness of willpower, and it is not irreversible. What you are experiencing, that precise sequence of feeling okay and then crashing before 11 in the morning, is one of the most predictable and well-documented physiological responses to a specific type of meal. A response that millions of people experience every single day. A response that has a name, a mechanism, and most importantly, a fix. You are not broken. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is just responding to the wrong signal. And that signal is almost certainly coming from a breakfast that the entire health food industry told you was good for you. That is the part that is worth being genuinely angry about. Because the information exists. It has been sitting in peer-reviewed journals for years, but it has not made its way into the morning television segments or the health food labeling or the advice most people receive from well-meaning sources. And in the meantime, millions of people are eating what they believe is a healthy breakfast and unknowingly triggering the very blood sugar cycle they are trying to avoid. Now here is something I want you to hold in the back of your mind as we go through today's strategies. There is a specific question I am going to come back to toward the end of this video that most people never think to ask. It is about what happens in your body, not just during the meal and not just in the hour afterward, but across the entire rest of your day, and how breakfast sets a hormonal pattern that influences every other meal, every craving, and every energy decision your body makes from that point forward. Most people think breakfast affects the morning. The research says something much more interesting. Hold on to that, because the answer is one of the most compelling pieces of metabolic science I have ever read, and it changes how you think about the entire question of blood sugar management. Brindeden, Fentonquith, 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 Fantonequith, 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 Fantonequith. My name is Dr. Jane Mitchell. I have spent more than 20 years working with patients managing metabolic conditions, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin resistance, and the daily reality of trying to feel well in a body that seems to be working against you. In that time, I have reviewed hundreds of clinical studies on blood sugar, dietary composition, and the specific role that breakfast plays in metabolic health. I have sat across from patients who were doing everything right by every conventional standard and still could not get their numbers stable. And I have watched those same patients experience genuine, measurable change when we finally addressed the one meal everyone had left untouched. What I am going to share with you today is not a supplement protocol. It is not a brand sponsorship. It is not a diet plan I am selling you. It is the clearest, most honest summary I can give you of what the research actually says about how breakfast composition affects blood sugar, insulin, energy, and long-term metabolic health. I want you to walk away from this video with 5 specific, practical strategies you can start using tomorrow morning and with a real understanding of why each one works at the level of biology, not just convention. Because here is what I have learned after 2 decades in this field. When people understand why something works, they follow through. When they are just told what to do without the reasoning, they comply for a week and then drift back. You deserve the reasoning, so let us go through it together. Before we dive in, if you're finding this useful, take 2 seconds right now, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and give this a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people like you find this content. And drop a comment below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I'd love to know where our community is tuning in from around the world. Hold on a second. Before we go any further, I've put something together for you. It's called the Glucose Paradox. It's a free guide on blood sugar and diabetes, and you can grab it for free through the link in the description. I'm telling you this now because I want you to finish this video with a concrete tool in your hands. To get it right away, just click the link in the description, head over to my site, and drop your email. You'll receive the guide in your inbox a few minutes later. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. Let's get back to the video. Before I get into the 5 strategies, I want to tell you about a woman named Gloria. Gloria was 64 years old, living in Tucson, Arizona, and she had been managing type 2 diabetes for 7 years when her daughter convinced her to come see me. She was not in crisis. She was not negligent about her health. She walked every day. She took her medication without fail. She had cut out obvious sugar years ago. No soda, no candy, no desserts except on very special occasions. But her blood sugar numbers stayed stubbornly elevated. Her fasting readings in the morning were consistently higher than her doctor wanted. Her energy throughout the day was unreliable, good some mornings, terrible others, and she could never predict which it would be. She described feeling like she was constantly behind, like she was always one step short of actually feeling well. When I asked Gloria what she ate for breakfast, she described it the way most people describe it when they believe they are eating responsibly. She had a large bowl of old-fashioned oatmeal every morning. Steel cut, she was careful to specify, not instant. She added a banana for natural sweetness. She drank a glass of fresh orange juice that she squeezed herself. And she had a cup of coffee with a small amount of honey because she had heard that honey was healthier than sugar. Every single element of that breakfast was something she had been told was healthy. Every single element. And together they were creating one of the most challenging glucose environments possible for someone managing type 2 diabetes. We changed breakfast. We changed only breakfast. Not lunch, not dinner, not her medications, not her walking routine. Within 11 days, her fasting morning readings had dropped by an average of 16 points. Within 6 weeks, she told me she had not felt that level of consistent energy since before her diagnosis. She described it, and I want you to remember this, as finally feeling like I'm not fighting my own body every single morning. I want you to hear Gloria's story now, before the science, because the science is going to make much more sense when you have a human face in front of it. Gloria's breakfast was not unusual. It was typical. It was what millions of people eat every morning, under the impression that they are making sound choices. And the fact that it was causing harm is not Gloria's failure. It is an information failure, one we are going to address right now. Strategy number 5. And we are building from the foundation upward. So number 5 is essential, even though it is the starting point. Number 5 is this. Start every breakfast with protein and make it the first thing on your plate. I want to describe a symptom to you first, because this is always how we start. You know that feeling about 90 minutes after breakfast when your stomach seems genuinely empty, even though you know you ate. When you are sure you had a real meal, a full bowl of something, and somehow hunger has already returned like a dog scratching at the door. That feeling, that fast-returning, impatient hunger, is not your metabolism running too fast. It is your blood sugar doing exactly what fast-digesting carbohydrates cause it to do. Spike sharply, trigger an aggressive insulin response, and then drop. And when it drops, your body sends a hunger signal. It is physiologically accurate. Your blood sugar has genuinely gone low. The problem is not the signal. The problem is the sequence that created it. Think of your digestive system like a loading dock at a warehouse. On an organized day, deliveries arrive at scheduled intervals, one truck at a time, and the workers can unload each one carefully and efficiently. Now imagine 50 trucks arriving simultaneously with no scheduling and no coordination. Chaos. Everything gets backed up. Emergency protocols kick in. Resources get overwhelmed and then exhausted. That is what a high-carbohydrate breakfast does to your glucose and insulin system. Glucose enters the bloodstream in a single fast wave. Insulin surges to manage it aggressively. And when the surge is handled, blood sugar crashes. The scientific term for what happens next is reactive hypoglycemia, a drop in blood glucose that follows an excessive insulin response. It does not have to be dangerous to be disruptive. Even a moderate reactive drop is enough to produce fatigue, brain fog, irritability, and that urgent demanding hunger that sends most people toward the nearest fast carbohydrate. Protein changes this entire sequence. When protein is present in a meal, it triggers a hormonal response that slows the rate at which your stomach empties its contents into the small intestine. Food moves more slowly. Glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually. Insulin rises at a rate your system can manage without overshooting. The hunger signal, instead of returning in 90 minutes, stays quiet for 3 to 4 hours. But here is the part that most people have never heard, and it is genuinely important. Protein stimulates the release of a hormone called glucagon-like peptide 1, abbreviated GLP-1. This hormone is now so well understood for its effects on blood sugar and appetite that pharmaceutical companies have built entire classes of diabetes medications around mimicking it. Synthetically, you may have heard of some of these drugs by name in recent years. What protein does is trigger your body to produce GLP-1 naturally. That natural release signals your pancreas to manage insulin more carefully, slows digestion further, and communicates directly with the hunger centers of your brain to reduce appetite signals for hours afterward. You do not need a prescription to activate that system. You need protein at breakfast. Eggs are the most versatile and accessible source. Plain Greek yogurt, not the flavored varieties which are frequently loaded with added sugar, but plain full-fat Greek yogurt provides substantial protein along with gut-supporting probiotics. Cottage cheese is one of the most underused breakfast options in America, and one of the most effective. Nuts and nut butters add protein along with fat, though they work best as additions to a protein-forward meal rather than the centerpiece. Legumes, lentils, beans, chickpeas have been eaten at breakfast in various cultures for centuries, and the research on their benefits for blood sugar management is among the most consistent in the nutritional literature. That is number 5. Protein first, present in meaningful quantity, at every breakfast without exception. Now you might be thinking, I already have eggs sometimes. Why haven't I noticed a difference? The answer is coming in the strategies ahead. because protein alone is powerful, but it works best when it is part of a specific combination. And the way you structure the rest of the meal around that protein is what determines whether you feel the difference from day one or whether the effect is muted by everything else on the plate. Strategy number 4. Healthy fat belongs at breakfast, and for reasons that go far beyond calories. Here is the symptom I want you to recognize first. You know the feeling around mid-morning when your energy just deflates. Not crashes exactly, but quietly deflates, like a slow leak rather than a blowout. You were fine, then you were less fine, and you cannot pinpoint the moment it changed because it happened gradually. That slow deflation is often the signal of a moderate blood sugar dip, less dramatic than a full crash, but consistent and draining, and it frequently happens in people who added protein to their breakfast but did not include fat. Think of your digestive process like water moving through a river system. When the river is wide and unobstructed, water flows fast and surges quickly. Now imagine a series of natural barriers, rocks, reeds, a narrowing of the channel. The water still moves, but it moves more slowly, more evenly, in a way that the downstream environment can absorb without flooding. Dietary fat is that series of natural barriers. Specifically, fat slows gastric emptying, the rate at which your stomach releases its contents into the small intestine. When food moves through more slowly, everything that follows is more gradual. Carbohydrates are broken down more slowly. Glucose enters the bloodstream more gently. The insulin response is more proportionate. The fats that accomplish this most effectively are the ones closest to their whole food source: avocado, extra virgin olive oil, walnuts, almonds, pecans, pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, ground flax. These are not just delivery mechanisms for calories. They contain specific compounds that interact with the metabolic system in ways we are still fully mapping. Take extra virgin olive oil, specifically. Recent research has identified a compound in it called oleocanthal, a natural polyphenol that works through some of the same biological pathways as certain anti-inflammatory medications. This matters for blood sugar because chronic low-grade inflammation is now understood to be one of the key drivers of insulin resistance over time. When your cells are inflamed, they become less responsive to insulin's signal. The door that insulin knocks on does not open as readily. The result is that your pancreas has to produce more and more insulin to achieve the same effect, which is the definition of insulin resistance. Using olive oil to cook your eggs in the morning is not a neutral choice. It is an active metabolic intervention with genuine research behind it. The question I hear almost every time I discuss this: but doesn't fat make you gain weight? The short answer is that the relationship between dietary fat and body weight is far more complex than the low-fat advice of the 1980s and 1990s suggested. What the research on dietary fat and blood sugar consistently shows is that healthy fats, eaten as part of a balanced meal that includes protein and fiber, reduce post-meal glucose spikes, improve satiety signals, and support the cellular environment in which insulin functions. The fats that cause problems are the industrial ones, the heavily processed vegetable oils, the trans fats in packaged foods, the fats in commercial baked goods and fast food. Not avocado, not olive oil, not the fat in a whole egg. Simple rule worth remembering: if the fat comes from a whole food, it is almost certainly working in your favor at breakfast. That is number 4. Add healthy fat to your first meal. Not as an afterthought, but as a deliberate and structurally important element of what you are building on that plate. Strategy number 3. Fiber that forms a physical barrier inside your digestive tract. And I want to start with a symptom that is slightly less obvious than the others, but just as real. You know the feeling around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, when a kind of deep bone-level fatigue sets in. When you have eaten reasonably all day, and you still feel like your body is running on whatever reserves it has left, rather than actual fuel. That afternoon collapse is often the downstream consequence of a morning blood sugar cycle that never fully stabilized. The morning spike and crash set a metabolic tone. The body spent the morning in emergency mode, managing a glucose surge, overcompensating with insulin, dropping, recovering. And by afternoon, the system is tired. Not from the afternoon, from the morning. The specific type of fiber I want to talk about is called viscous fiber, sometimes called soluble fiber. And I need you to understand that not all fiber is the same, because the difference matters enormously for blood sugar. Insoluble fiber, the kind in wheat bran and the skins of most vegetables, moves through your digestive system relatively intact. It is valuable for gut health and regularity, but it does not have a dramatic direct effect on blood sugar. Viscous fiber is different. When it encounters water in your digestive tract, it absorbs that water and forms a thick gel-like substance. Imagine spreading a thin layer of gel across the walls of your intestines. That gel physically slows the movement of glucose from the foods around it into your bloodstream. It is a controlled release system. Instead of glucose flooding in all at once, it filters through the gel gradually and steadily. The spike is lower, the curve is longer and flatter. The insulin response is more proportionate and less frantic. But here is the piece that makes viscous fiber extraordinary rather than just useful. That gel in your intestines is also feeding the community of bacteria in your gut, your microbiome. When gut bacteria are fed viscous fiber, they produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids. And research in the past decade has revealed that these compounds do something remarkable. They improve the sensitivity of your cells to insulin. They help your cells open the door more readily when insulin knocks. They directly counteract the cellular resistance that develops when blood sugar has been chronically elevated. A breakfast high in viscous fiber is not just managing your glucose curve for that morning, it is feeding a microbial community that actively supports your blood sugar management for the rest of the day, across every meal you eat. Foods rich in viscous fiber that work beautifully at breakfast. Chia seeds, which form that characteristic gel texture when they contact liquid, and are now among the most studied foods in metabolic nutrition research. Ground flax seeds, which add omega-3 fatty acids alongside their fiber. Steel-cut oats and old-fashioned rolled oats, which contain a specific viscous fiber called beta-glucan, with extensive research behind it for both cholesterol and blood sugar management. I want to be precise about oats, because this comes up constantly, and the distinction genuinely matters. Instant oatmeal, the kind in individual packets that cooks in 2 minutes, has been processed in a way that dramatically increases the speed at which it digests. The fiber structure is partially broken down before you ever eat it. Steel-cut oats and old-fashioned rolled oats have that fiber structure intact. They take longer to cook, but they also take longer to digest, producing a fundamentally different glucose response. If you have been eating instant oatmeal and wondering why your blood sugar does not respond the way oatmeal is supposed to help it respond, this is the answer. The practical application is simple. 1 to 2 tablespoons of chia seeds stirred into yogurt or oatmeal. A spoonful of ground flax added to whatever you are already eating. A small handful of steel-cut oats prepared the night before and warmed in the morning. None of this is complicated, none of it is expensive, and the effect on your post-meal glucose curve is measurable and consistent. That is number 3. Viscous fiber, present at breakfast, creating the physical barrier that changes how quickly the rest of your meal reaches your bloodstream. Now we are moving into the 2 strategies where most people notice the most immediate and dramatic difference. I want to pause here and address something I know is on your mind, because it comes up in almost every conversation I have with patients at this point in the discussion. You might be thinking, I have tried eating better before, and it did not make that much of a difference. I changed things, and the results were not what I expected. If that sounds familiar, I hear you, and I want to offer you a specific answer rather than a general reassurance. In almost every case, when I ask patients what they changed previously, the answer is some version of, I reduced portions, I cut obvious sugar, I switched to whole grain versions of what I was already eating. I started having a salad at lunch, all worthwhile. None of them breakfast. And because breakfast is the meal that sets the hormonal pattern for the entire day, leaving it unchanged means the blood sugar instability cycle resets every morning, regardless of what happens at other meals. You were not failing to change, you were changing the wrong meal first. Strategy number 2. Choose your fruit deliberately, and understand that not all fruit is the same for blood sugar. Here is the symptom first, because this one is subtle, and most people miss it entirely. You know that feeling in the late morning when you reach for something and you cannot quite explain why. You are not deeply hungry. You just feel like you need something. A small snack, a piece of fruit, something to take the edge off a feeling you cannot fully name. That vague, restless pull toward food between meals is very often driven by a modest but persistent blood sugar instability, a system that has not been crashing dramatically, but has never fully stabilized either. It is background noise in your glucose curve, and it is almost always traceable to something you ate within the first hour of the morning. Fruit is where this gets complicated, and I want to be honest rather than oversimplified. Fruit is not bad for you. Let me say that with complete clarity. Whole fruit eaten as part of a balanced diet contains vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber that support health in numerous, well-documented ways. The research on fruit consumption and overall health is largely positive, but there is a spectrum, a wide, meaningful spectrum of how different fruits affect blood sugar. And most people have never been given a framework for thinking about it. On one end of that spectrum, fruit juice. Even freshly squeezed, entirely natural, no sugar-added fruit juice. When you juice a fruit, you remove almost all of the fiber. What remains is the natural sugar in liquid, concentrated form, with nothing to slow its absorption. A glass of orange juice reaches your bloodstream at nearly the same speed as a glass of soda. The sugar is natural. The spike is not materially different. A large glass of fresh orange juice consumed first thing in the morning, particularly alongside other carbohydrates, and particularly in the cortisol-primed, glucose-sensitive environment of the early morning, can trigger a blood sugar response that surprises most people when they see it on a continuous glucose monitor. This is not a fringe finding. It is well established in the clinical literature, and it is one of the most common sources of unintended blood sugar disruption in people who are otherwise eating carefully. On the other end of the spectrum, berries. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, these fruits occupy a genuinely unique position in the research on metabolic health. They are relatively low in total sugar compared to most fruits. They are high in fiber, and they contain a class of plant compounds called polyphenols, specifically anthocyanins, the pigments responsible for their deep colors, that have been shown in multiple controlled studies to directly improve how efficiently cells respond to insulin. Regular berry consumption is associated with improved insulin sensitivity, reduced post-meal glucose spikes, and lower markers of chronic inflammation in the studies that have examined it. If you currently drink fruit juice in the morning, replacing it with a cup of whole berries is one of the highest impact single substitutions you can make for blood sugar management. Same vitamin C, radically different glucose response, and here is one more piece of this strategy that costs nothing and requires no ingredient changes at all. The order in which you eat the components of your breakfast produces a measurably different blood sugar response, even when the total meal is identical. Research published in the journal Diabetes Care demonstrated that eating protein and vegetables before carbohydrates using the exact same foods, the exact same portions, the exact same total calories produced significantly lower post-meal glucose levels than eating the carbohydrates first. The mechanism is straightforward. When protein and fiber arrive in your digestive system before carbohydrates, they begin regulating the digestive environment before glucose has any chance to flood in. The traffic lights are already installed by the time the cars arrive. When carbohydrates come first, there is nothing to slow them. The spike has already begun before the protein and fat even reach the stomach. Practical implication: if you are eating eggs and oatmeal, eat the eggs first. If you are having berries alongside something starchy, eat the berries first. If you are eating a full balanced breakfast and you want to maximize the blood sugar benefit of every element on that plate, the sequence is protein and fat first, fiber and vegetables second, any remaining carbohydrates last. Zero cost, zero new ingredients, measurably different outcome inside your body. That is number 2. Before I tell you about number 1, the combination strategy that brings everything together, I want to tell you about a man named Raymond. Raymond was 71 years old, living outside of Memphis, Tennessee. He had been diabetic for 12 years. He was not a man who scared easily or asked for help often, and he came to see me only because his numbers had been climbing despite 3 separate medication adjustments in the previous 18 months. Raymond was skeptical of dietary intervention in a way that many of my patients are. He had heard dietary advice before. He had been told to eat less, to eat better, to avoid this, and include that. And in his experience, the changes had never produced results proportionate to the effort they required. He was, as he put it, past the point of believing that breakfast is the answer to anything. I asked Raymond to tell me exactly what he ate in the morning. He had cornflakes with low-fat milk and a sliced banana every morning without variation for years. On the days when he had more time, he added a piece of whole wheat toast with a thin layer of margarine. I did not lecture Raymond. I showed him the research on what each component of that breakfast was doing inside his body at the specific hormonal moment of the early morning. The cornflakes converting to glucose within 15 minutes of eating. The banana adding a second, rapid digesting carbohydrate source. The low-fat milk removing the fat that might have slowed absorption. The whole wheat toast adding more glucose to an already overwhelmed system. And all of it arriving in a bloodstream already primed by morning cortisol. Raymond was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "So I've been doing the worst possible thing every morning for years, thinking I was being careful." That is exactly right. And it is not his fault. It is an information failure. We replaced Raymond's breakfast with the strategy I am about to describe to you. He did not change anything else. After 3 weeks, his fasting blood sugar had dropped 22 points. His doctor reduced one of his medications at the next appointment, and Raymond, who had told me he was past believing dietary changes could matter, sent me a note that said simply, "I wish someone had told me this 12 years ago." And here it is. Number 1. The breakfast pattern that metabolic researchers identify most consistently as the most effective for blood sugar stability is not a single food and not a single nutrient. It is a specific combination of 3 elements, all present simultaneously, all from whole food sources, structured so that they work on the problem from multiple directions at the same time. Protein, healthy fat, viscous fiber, together in the same meal, with carbohydrates either absent or positioned at the end of the sequence. Here is why this combination is fundamentally different from any one element alone. Protein slows digestion and triggers GLP-1, the hormone that tells your pancreas to manage insulin carefully and tells your brain that hunger can stand down for the next several hours. Healthy fat slows gastric emptying, the rate at which your stomach releases its contents, which means everything that follows is absorbed more gradually, including any carbohydrates that might be present. Viscous fiber creates a physical gel that further slows glucose absorption at the intestinal level and feeds the gut bacteria that produce compounds which improve insulin sensitivity over time. When all 3 are present together, you are not just slowing one mechanism, you are slowing 3, simultaneously, from 3 different points in the digestive process. The glucose curve that results is genuinely flat compared to what a carbohydrate-forward breakfast produces. A gentle rise, a modest peak, a slow, steady return to baseline. Not a spike, not a crash, just hours of stable, usable energy. Let me give you specific, practical breakfasts that embody this combination, because I never want this to remain abstract. 2 or 3 eggs cooked in a small amount of olive oil, served alongside a handful of spinach or arugula and half an avocado. Protein from the eggs, fat from the olive oil and the avocado, fiber from the leafy greens. Blood sugar response is minimal and sustained. This is one of the most effective breakfasts in the metabolic literature, and it takes 7 minutes. Plain full-fat Greek yogurt, roughly 1 cup, topped with 2 tablespoons of chia seeds, a small handful of walnuts, and a cup of mixed berries. Protein from the yogurt, fat and viscous fiber from the chia and walnuts, polyphenols and additional fiber from the berries. No cooking required. Prepare it the night before if mornings are pressed for time. Steel-cut oats with a spoonful of almond butter stirred in, a tablespoon of ground flaxseed added on top, and sliced strawberries on the side. The steel-cut oats digest slowly compared to instant. The almond butter adds protein and fat. The flax adds viscous fiber and omega-3s. The strawberries add polyphenols. Eat the almond butter and berries before the oats to establish the protective sequence we discussed in Strategy 2. None of these meals require special ingredients. None of them are expensive. All of them are available in any grocery store. The shift is not about what you buy, it is about how you combine what you already have, and which elements you make sure are present at every single breakfast rather than treated as optional additions. What all three of these meals share is the absence of refined carbohydrates as the structural center of the meal. White bread is not the base, instant cereal is not present, fruit juice is not in the glass. Instead, the meal is built around the protein-fat-fiber combination, and if carbohydrates are present at all, they are the last element in the sequence and the smallest proportion of the plate. That is number 1. Now let me answer the question I asked you to hold at the beginning of this video. I told you there was something remarkable about how breakfast affects not just the morning but the entire rest of the day. Here it is. When you eat a high-carbohydrate breakfast, you are not just setting up a mid-morning crash. You are establishing a hormonal pattern, a cycle of insulin peaks and blood sugar troughs that continues to influence your hunger, your energy, and your food decisions for hours afterward. The mid-morning crash drives you toward a fast carbohydrate snack, which creates a second spike and crash before lunch. The pre-lunch hunger is more urgent than it would otherwise be, which drives larger lunch portions with worse composition than you would choose on a stable morning. The afternoon slump arrives earlier and deeper. The evening hunger is more intense. The tendency to overeat at dinner is greater. The morning meal is not one meal out of 3. It is the metabolic signal that the entire day responds to. Getting it right does not just change the morning, it changes every meal that follows. And getting it wrong, even when every other meal is reasonable, means the blood sugar instability cycle resets at 7 o'clock, and the body spends the next 12 hours trying to recover from it. This is why people who make only breakfast changes so consistently report improvement not just in their morning energy, but in their afternoon cravings, their evening eating patterns, and their overall sense of being in control of their hunger rather than chasing it. There are a few additional elements I want to address before your practical challenge, because they interact directly with everything we have covered, and the picture is incomplete without them. The first is movement after eating. Your skeletal muscle, the muscle in your legs, your core, your arms, is one of the largest consumers of glucose in your entire body. And here is the remarkable thing. When your muscles are active, they can absorb glucose from the bloodstream directly, without requiring insulin to facilitate that transfer. They essentially bypass the insulin system entirely and pull glucose in through their own mechanism. What this means practically is that 10 to 15 minutes of gentle movement after breakfast, not a workout, not a structured exercise session, just a walk around the block, can measurably flatten your post-meal blood sugar spike before it fully develops. The muscles activated by walking begin absorbing the glucose from breakfast independently, which reduces how much stays circulating in the bloodstream and requires insulin to manage. Research on post-meal walking consistently identifies it as one of the most effective and most underused blood sugar management tools available. A short walk after breakfast is not a nice optional addition to your morning. For people managing blood sugar, it is one of the highest return 10 minutes of the day. The second is sleep, and I raise this not to add to your list of things to worry about, but because the connection is direct and the research is unambiguous. Even a single night of significantly disrupted sleep, fewer than 6 hours, can measurably worsen insulin sensitivity the following morning. Your cells become less responsive to insulin's signal. Your pancreas has to work harder to manage the same glucose load. The same breakfast that would produce a modest, well-managed glucose response on a well-rested morning produces a sharper, less controlled response after a poor night. If you are making the right dietary changes and not seeing the results you expected, and your sleep has been poor, the sleep may be partially neutralizing the dietary benefit. Protecting sleep quality is not separate from blood sugar management, it is directly part of it. The third is the stress connection, which works through the same cortisol pathway we discussed at the beginning of this video. When you are under significant ongoing stress, cortisol stays elevated chronically. Elevated cortisol raises blood sugar as a background condition, independent of what you eat. A protein-fat-fiber breakfast still helps significantly, but its effect is working against an elevated baseline, which can make the improvement feel smaller than it would be in a less stressed state. Managing the heaviest sources of daily stress, not eliminating stress entirely, which is neither realistic nor necessary, but addressing the most significant sources, is a legitimate and meaningful part of blood sugar management. Here is your practical challenge for the next 7 mornings, and I want to give it to you in the simplest possible terms. Every breakfast for the next 7 days should contain 3 elements: a clear protein source, a healthy fat, and a viscous fiber. You do not need to measure or weigh anything. You do not need to eliminate any food entirely. You simply need to look at your plate before you eat and confirm that all 3 elements are genuinely present. Is there protein? Eggs, plain Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, nuts, legumes? Is there fat? Avocado, olive oil, nuts, seeds? Is there viscous fiber? Chia seeds, ground flax, steel-cut oats, leafy vegetables, berries? If all 3 are there, you are doing the most important thing. If you are used to cereal or toast, and the idea of eliminating them feels too abrupt, do not eliminate them on day 1. Add protein first, an egg alongside the toast, Greek yogurt next to the cereal. Then over the following days, reduce the refined carbohydrate proportion and increase the protein, fat, fiber elements. Gradual, sustainable change is more valuable than dramatic change that lasts 4 days. Eat carbohydrates last in the sequence, always. This single habit, applied consistently, produces a measurably different blood sugar outcome from the exact same meal. Take a 10-minute walk after eating if you possibly can. Pay attention to 2 specific signals over those 7 days. Your energy between 9:30 and 11 in the morning. Is the familiar deflation still arriving, or is it staying quiet? And your hunger before lunch. Is it urgent and demanding, or simply present and manageable? Most people who commit to this notice a real change within 3 to 5 days. Some notice it on the very first morning. Your body's feedback when blood sugar is stable is clear and unmistakable. You will feel the difference before any lab test confirms it. I want to close by bringing you back to where we started today, and to where Gloria started, standing in her kitchen in Tucson, making the breakfast she had been making for years, believing she was doing everything right, and still feeling her energy collapse before 11 o'clock every single morning. She was not lazy, she was not careless, she was following advice that was incomplete, and when she finally had the information she needed, her body responded within days. You came into this video with that same experience, that mid-morning fog, that urgent, unexplained hunger arriving too soon, that feeling of doing the right thing and still getting the wrong result. Now you understand what was causing it, and now you have 5 specific research-backed strategies to change it, starting tomorrow morning with no special purchases and no dramatic overhaul. Gloria's words have stayed with me because they describe something I want you to feel. She said she felt like she was finally not fighting her own body every single morning. That is what metabolically stable mornings feel like. Not wired, not artificially energized, just steady, clear, and genuinely present from the first hour of the day. That is available to you, starting at breakfast tomorrow. And hey, if you made it all the way here, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the like button to let me know this was worth your time. And leave a comment below, tell me what country you're watching from. Seriously, I read every single one, and it means a lot to see how far this community reaches. You know what the problem is with diabetes and high blood sugar? Most people find out way too late, and by the time they do, they have no idea where to even start. That's why I decided to create a free guide. It's called the Glucose Paradox, and inside, you'll find everything you wish you'd known sooner. I'll explain how blood sugar actually works, and why your body sometimes reacts the exact opposite way you'd expect. That's why it's called a paradox. I've also included concrete habits you can start changing right now, even if you know zero about nutrition or medicine. It's free, you can download it in a second, and it might be the single most useful thing you do for your health today. Just click the link in the description to head to the site, drop your email, and get the guide sent straight to you. Don't put this off.